Following on from our earlier video, we're going to look at how we can run commands and variables. So first of all, we're going to look at running multiple commands in a single command line. So there's several ways to run commands in sequence. We're going to start with the simplest one and also show why it's not the best one. So we're going to go ahead and use the semicolon as a separator for these two commands. So we're going to do a hello world and we're going to do a hello again. Now, the first time we run this, we're expecting both outputs to be in sequence, and nothing spectacular there. Just want to show that both commands run normally first of all. Now, if we modify the first one to make sure it doesn't run by giving it a syntax error, what you'll note here is the second one still runs, so you still see hello again, even though the first one didn't run successfully. Now, depending on your environment, that might be desirable, it might not. So in this case, let's look at how you were to set them up in a way whereby they would only run if they were successful. So we replace the semicolon, and we're going to replace it with @@. And the @@ sign in this case, or and rather, gives you the ability to run them, but only if the first one succeeded. So you can kind of daisy chain together the commands, but only if they succeed will it move on to the next one. Now, as you can imagine, there are circumstances where that would be particularly useful. Another one that's particularly useful is to rerun your previous command if you've made, say, I don't know, a requirement that requires sudo. So you just put sudo, exclamation mark, and it will rerun the previous command, but this time with sudo in front of it. This is obviously particularly useful where you have really long syntaxes and you don't want to retype it every time. So that's the first example. Another one that's particularly useful is you can use the exclamation mark and then the number. So if we bring up history for a second here, and we just type in history and we'll see all the command line history. Let's say that I want to rerun a command. So I can actually just say, okay, I'm going to run command 630. So I can actually exclamation mark and then put in the number of the command, in this case the history 630, and it will rerun it. And in this case we know that that wasn't the successful one anyway, so we want to rerun 631. Same principle, just again exclamation mark, the number of the history, and you're done. You have the ability to rerun any of the commands without needing to type it all out. Particularly useful if you had a really long command in the past that you needed to rerun, but not probably the most useful on day-to-day. Next is one of my personal favorites, reusing a variable. Now, we're going to create a directory and then we're going to cd into the directory without typing the directory name. So if you have a really long path, which we don't have here, but it's only an example, we can use the exclamation mark $ to retype the variable. So if you had a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious type command and then just simply put the exclamation mark $ behind your next command, you get to reuse that variable, thus not needing to type out that really long directory name. Speaking of variables, and this brings us nicely on to the next one, setting variables. Now, there's quite easy to create a variable from a bash command line, so we can just simply go ahead and create my variable equals and then whatever the variable is. So in this case, my bash var, and we can just simply echo it out to prove that it exists, which is nothing more complicated than echoing $myvar. Now, not the most useful example, but again you can see how you can set variables. So in this case we're just passing the earlier syntax back down into the lower variable. Now let's look at a more complicated example. So let's look at variables within bash script. So here we're going to have a look at a very simple example where we've got three types of variable, although we're only covering two in this script, and I'll come on to the third one at the end. So we've got the hello, which equals hello, which is going to be our first variable. We've got a function which has got a local variable called hello, which equals world, and then last we are echoing out the script variable and the function variable. So what this looks like is pretty obvious. It's going to be a hello world, right? Now, the reason I say that this is scripting is kind of, you need to get the concept around your head. You can have multiple variables with the same name as long as they're declared differently. So here we have one that's called hello world, which part of it is coming from the hello at the top, which is the script variable, and the second part is coming from the function variable. So we're going to redo the function variable to hello world, and we're going to redo the script function to hello everyone, just to kind of distinguish them a little bit. But we're keeping the variable name the same. So the variable in this case is called hello, and the second one is also called hello. But because one is defined in the script and one is defined as a local, they display effectively as they're called. Now, the reason I say that this is important to remember is you have three types. You have a global, you have a script, and you have a local. Now, we haven't covered global because that would be a little bit more complicated, but basically it's a persistent variable. So we might get another look at those later. So next up, we've got probably the two favorite commands left. We've got man, which is short for manual, which allows you to basically take any command, but first type man in front of it, and you then get the list of actual commands. So it's a manual. Very simple, but very useful if you need to look up some syntaxes or command variables. Next, we're going to look at the autocomplete. So as you can see, I typed less and then SC, which in this case was the first unique characters. So this is the thing, it just needs to be unique. So as an example, if I put app and put IN, the unique is install. So in this case, RE and remove. So as long as it's the first unique part, you can basically tab autocomplete through. Now hopefully you found this video useful. If you did, give us a thumbs up, and as always, subscribe for more content.